How close is the heart to the Quran, not just physically, because it might be sitting on the shelf nearby, not just ritualistically, because maybe it's read in Ramadan, but emotionally, spiritually. Personally, sometimes the Quran is in the house, but not in the life. It's in the room, but not in the heart. It's on the tongue, but not in the actions. It's a painful thing to admit, but maybe that's the first step back to it. There was a time when the Quran was a lifeline, when every verse felt alive like a direct message, when opening its pages meant finding answers, finding hope, finding peace. But with time, distractions took over. Social media became the comfort, phones became the daily check-in, and the Quran slowly became background noise in a busy life, but it never left. It's still waiting, silently, gently, ready to speak again the moment attention returns. This book was never meant to be a burden. It was meant to be a cure, a guide, a companion in every stage of life, whether broken or whole, lost or strong. It doesn't ask for perfection, it asks for sincerity. For hearts that want to come closer, even if they've been distant for years, and the most beautiful thing, one verse with understanding can be enough to shift the entire direction of a life. Understanding is the key. Because reading without meaning is like hearing a voice in a language the soul doesn't grasp. But the moment the meaning sinks in, healing begins. That one verse that says, "So remember me and I will remember you." That one line that says, "Do not despair of the mercy of Allah." That's not general, that's personal. The Quran knows heartbreak, it knows loneliness. It speaks to anxiety, to guilt, to fear, to regret. It doesn't just guide, it understands, but only if it's given the chance to speak. Time is passing, the world is loud, but the Quran is still, peaceful, timeless, true, and all it asks is, come closer, just a little, just enough to listen, because no matter how far someone has drifted, one sincere step back is enough. The Quran doesn't punish the distant heart, it calls it and it waits. So maybe the real question isn't do you believe in the Quran, it's do you treat it like something worth staying close to? Because closeness isn't in how often it's read, but in how deeply it's felt, and there's still time to feel it again. There's a strange comfort in seeing a Quran placed high on a shelf at home. It's wrapped in a beautiful cloth, kept clean, never disrespected. It's there in every Muslim household, almost like a symbol of identity, proof that this is a believing home. But the question is, does its presence in the home mean it's present in the heart? There's a difference between owning the Quran and living by the Quran. Between reciting it with the tongue and feeling it in the soul, between memorizing its words and understanding its message. The physical presence of the Quran is not the same as being spiritually close to it. It's easy to assume that having the Quran near is enough. After all, it's treated with so much respect. No one places it on the ground, it's kissed when picked up, it's handled with wudu, it's stored in the cleanest place of the house. But this physical respect, though important, can create an illusion of connection while, deep down, the heart may remain disconnected. Because spiritual closeness requires something more: time, attention, understanding, and emotional engagement. A person may read the Quran every day, fluently, even with perfect taj. We'd yet remain completely unaware of what they're reading. The eyes move across the letters, the tongue moves effortlessly, but the heart stays empty. Why? Because the soul is not involved, the message is not entering, it's a voice being heard but not listened to. Imagine receiving a heartfelt letter from someone you love, someone who cares deeply about you. You open the envelope, look at the paper, admire the handwriting, but you never read the words, you never try to understand what they wanted to say. Would that be considered love? Would that be real connection? This is how many people treat the Quran. It's admired but not understood. It's respected but not reflected upon. It's present but not lived. The Quran wasn't revealed to be placed on shelves or kept in apps. It was revealed to be placed in hearts, to guide actions, to transform thinking, to heal wounds that nothing else can reach. Spiritual closeness begins when the Quran is invited into life, when it's not just recited but experienced. When it's not just read but pondered upon, when it's no longer seen as an obligation but as a lifeline. One can be physically close to the Kaaba and still have a heart far from Allah. One can sit in the masjid every day and still not feel the presence of faith. And one can open the Quran daily, yet remain spiritually distant if the connection isn't sincere. True closeness is built through reflection and relationship. The Quran uses the word tadabbur, reflection. It calls believers to think, to ask, to ponder, not just to recite, but to feel. When the heart is close to the Quran, verses begin to speak directly to life. When going through hardship, the words of patience feel like comfort. When feeling lost, the stories of the prophets feel like guidance. When drowning in guilt, the verses of mercy feel like rescue. But if the Quran is just something to check off a to-do list, just a few pages to finish, or just something to play in the background while cooking or cleaning, the message will never reach deep. Spiritual closeness also means allowing the Quran to challenge comfort zones. It may call for change, it may make one question habits, it may push toward growth. That's the sign of real connection, when the Quran is not just heard but obeyed. When it doesn't just inform the mind but transforms the heart. Physical closeness is easy. Anyone can keep a mushaf in their backpack. But spiritual closeness requires humility, sincerity, and effort. It means showing up for the Quran with the same energy used to scroll through social media, binge watch entertainment, or chase worldly goals. It means admitting, I need this book, not just as a reward, not just as a tradition, but as survival. The soul longs for purpose, peace, and truth, and all of that has already been given inside a book that's been sitting close all along. There's a difference between something we do occasionally and something we live with every day. For many, the Quran has become something we visit, not something we walk beside. A ritual, not a relationship. A religious duty, not a personal companion. But the Quran was never meant to be treated like a visitor. It was meant to be a companion, something that stays with the heart in moments of joy, grief, confusion, and clarity. Not something limited to a few days in Ramadan or when someone passes away. It's easy to fall into the habit of only turning to the Quran when the timing feels right, when there's a tragedy, or when there's a special month, or during Friday recitation of Surah Qaf. But what about the normal days, the silent days, the ordinary mornings and the lonely nights? That's when the Quran proves itself not just as a guide, but as a true friend. A ritual is something we do, often without thinking. A companion is someone we turn to, speak with, and lean on. And the Quran, if given the chance, does all of that and more. When looking at the life of the Prophet and the Sahaba ar-Ray, the Quran wasn't something they visited, it was something they carried with them. In every decision, in every hardship, in every joy, it was the lens through which they saw the world. It was their counselor, their strength, and their compass. They didn't read it just for the sake of reading. They absorbed it, reflected on it, let it challenge them, correct them, soften them, and through that they built their character, their choices, and their connection with Allah. Today, many people can finish a khatam of the Quran without remembering a single verse they truly applied. The goal becomes finishing pages, not building a relationship. But the Quran doesn't just want to be read, it wants to be lived. Imagine having someone who knows every secret you hide, every wound you carry, every tear you cry in the dark. Someone who knows exactly what you need to hear, exactly when you need to hear it, and says it with mercy, love, and wisdom. That's what the Quran is. A personal conversation with the one who created you. A book that doesn't expire, that doesn't become outdated, that doesn't depend on trends. A book that speaks to the young and old, the scholar and the sinner, the strong and the broken. And unlike worldly friends or companions, the Quran doesn't leave. It's not too busy. It doesn't judge based on your past. It doesn't walk away if you neglect it. It simply waits patiently until you're ready to return. That's the kind of companion it is. A ritual can sometimes feel empty. It can become mechanical, just words recited with the tongue while the mind is elsewhere. But when the Quran becomes a companion, the experience changes entirely. Every verse begins to feel personal. Every surah brings light to a different corner of the heart. The verses of mercy soothe the soul when feeling unworthy. The verses of warning awaken the soul when becoming heedless. The stories of the prophets bring comfort when facing struggles. The descriptions of Jannah fill the heart with hope. The reminders of the Day of Judgment realign priorities. When the Quran is treated like a companion, it becomes relevant. It becomes the first place to turn to in a storm, not the last resort. It becomes the source of peace in a restless heart. It becomes the friend that listens when no one else does. Making the Quran a companion doesn't mean spending hours every day. It starts with small, sincere moments. One verse a day read, understood and felt. One ayah reflected upon deeply can do more for the soul than an entire chapter rushed through without connection. It's about presence, not performance. It's about building a relationship that is constant, not seasonal. One that grows slowly but deeply. The Quran becomes a companion when it's welcomed not just with the tongue, but with the heart. There's a quiet kind of power in the Quran that often goes unnoticed. It's not always in the length of the recitation or in how many pages are finished in a sitting. Sometimes it's found in just one verse, a single line that reaches the heart, shakes the soul, and opens the door to change. Even one verse can change everything. The Quran is not an ordinary book. It's not meant to be rushed through or scanned like a newspaper. It's a divine conversation, a message from the Creator to the creation. And because Allah knows each heart intimately, He knows exactly what verse it needs, at the exact moment it needs it. One verse can comfort the one who's grieving. One verse can stop someone from giving up. One verse can bring a person back from the edge of sin. One verse can unlock tears that haven't fallen in years. One verse can wake up a heart that's been spiritually asleep for far too long. Sometimes people delay their connection with the Quran thinking, I don't have time to read a full chapter, or I need to study it properly before I start. But the Quran is not only for scholars or students. It's for every soul, and it doesn't take pages of study for that soul to be affected. Think of how powerful just one short verse can be. Indeed, with hardship comes ease. Surah Ash-Shar 94, 6 to someone in pain. This is more than just a reminder. It's hope, it's a promise, it's a lifeline. So remember me, I will remember you. Surah Al-Baqarah 2, 152 to someone feeling unseen, forgotten, or alone. These words hit differently. They're a direct connection. Do not despair of the mercy of Allah. Surah Az-Zumar 39, 53 to the one drowning in guilt, lost in sin, unsure if forgiveness is still possible. This verse feels like rescue. It's not about the length of what is read. It's about the impact, and impact comes from sincerity, not quantity. Every verse of the Quran carries a weight. Some verses feel like a hand on the shoulder, others feel like a mirror. Some offer healing, others offer warnings. But every single one is purposeful. Every ayah has the potential to stir something inside. That's because the Quran speaks to the human condition: fear, love, loss, joy, doubt, hope, temptation, gratitude, struggle, and growth. And because every person is different, the verse that changes one heart might not affect another in the same way. But when the heart is open, even a few words can turn the light back on. The stories in the Quran themselves show this. How many people were changed through a single moment of realization, a single instruction, a single verse? Take Umar ibn al-Khattab for example. His heart was turned completely when he heard a portion of Surah Toha. Just a few verses and the man who once wanted to kill the Prophet became one of Islam's greatest leaders. That wasn't a long lecture. It wasn't an entire juz. It was a verse that met him where his heart was ready. This is the power of divine words. In everyday life, people are moved by small things: a sentence from a friend, a quote on a wall, a moment of silence. If those small, worldly things can shake emotions, how much more powerful are the actual words of Allah? Sometimes people don't return to the Quran because they feel unworthy, too sinful, or too far gone. But that one verse that says, "And my mercy encompasses all things," Surah Al-Araf 7, 156 is enough to break down every excuse and remind the soul, you're never too far. The Quran doesn't ask for hours at a time. It asks for sincerity, even if it's just for one verse, one moment, one breath where the heart says, I need this. That's when the magic happens. That's when the connection begins. Because even one verse can be a turning point. Even one verse can be a light in darkness. Even one verse can change everything. When it comes to the Quran, many people know how to read it. Some have memorized it, and a few can recite it beautifully. But how many truly understand it, and more importantly, how many feel connected to it? There is a deep truth many overlook. Without understanding, there is no real connection. The Quran was not revealed just for the tongue to recite. It was revealed for the heart to absorb. It wasn't sent down to be admired from a distance. It was meant to be understood, reflected upon, and lived by. Imagine being handed a letter by someone who loves you, a personal, emotional, heartfelt message. You open it, you admire the paper, you read it out loud beautifully, but you don't understand the language, you nod, you smile, but you walk away without knowing what the letter was saying. That's what happens when the Quran is recited without reflection or understanding. The tongue may be moving, the voice may be beautiful, but the heart stays untouched. The Quran itself invites people to think, to reflect. Again and again it asks, do they not ponder upon the Quran? Surah Muhammad 47:24. This is a clear sign. The Quran isn't only for recitation. It's for deep thinking, for internal change, for guidance that can only happen when the message is understood. Understanding brings connection because it turns the Quran from a ritual into a relationship. When you understand a verse, it speaks to your life, it feels relevant, it feels personal. You read about patience and suddenly you remember your own struggles. You read about mercy and your guilt starts to soften. You read about Jannah and your heart finds hope. You read about warning and your soul becomes alert. It's not just about the words, it's about what they mean to you. For many people, the Quran is part of their daily routine. A few pages in the morning, a surah before bed, a quick recitation after prayer, but often those moments feel rushed, more like a task to complete than a conversation to enjoy. But something amazing happens when even a small portion is read with meaning. Suddenly, one ayah sticks, one phrase hits deep, one sentence becomes the answer to something that's been bothering the heart for weeks. This is the effect of understanding, even if it's just one verse a day. When it's read with attention and reflection, it creates a spiritual connection. The Quran stops feeling like a distant book and starts feeling like a personal guide. Understanding also brings humility. It reminds the soul of its purpose. It wakes up the sleeping conscience. It challenges the ego. When the heart understands the Quran, it begins to see the world differently. Priorities shift. The things that once seemed urgent start to feel small, and the things that were ignored, like kindness, truth, prayer, and accountability, become central. It's not that the words suddenly become powerful. The words have always been powerful. It's just that the door of the heart finally opens enough to receive them. One of the biggest misconceptions is that understanding the Quran is only for scholars or people who know Arabic fluently. But that's not true. Of course, learning Arabic adds depth, but the message of the Quran is universal. Translations exist in every major language. Tafsir is accessible for anyone willing to read. Reflection doesn't require a degree, just sincerity. A person doesn't need to be a scholar to feel the verse. Indeed, Allah is with the patient, or verily, in the remembrance of Allah do hearts find rest. These verses don't need years of study to touch the heart. They just need a moment of presence and a desire to understand. Understanding also deepens the emotional relationship with the Quran. It's one thing to cry while reciting because the voice sounds beautiful. It's another to cry because the verse describes something you're feeling. A fear you're hiding, a pain you haven't spoken about, a reminder you didn't know you needed. That emotional connection is born through understanding. The Quran is not a puzzle to solve. It's not a distant mystery. It's a message, a love letter, a warning, a healing, a guidance. It's everything the soul needs, but the soul can't receive what the mind doesn't understand, and so the more one understands, the more one connects. And the more one connects, the more the Quran becomes not just a book to be read, but a companion to live by. The human heart is complex. It feels deeply, it breaks silently, and it hopes endlessly. Joy, fear, sadness, regret, anxiety, anger, grief, relief. No 2 days feel the same, and no two people carry emotions in the exact same way. That's what makes the Quran so remarkable. It doesn't just guide, it understands. It doesn't just command, it heals. It speaks to the entire emotional spectrum of the human being. There's not a single emotion a person experiences that the Quran ignores. Every feeling finds its echo in the words of Allah. And that's why, no matter who opens it, young or old, lost or seeking, broken or strong, the Qur'an always has something to say. When the heart feels heavy with grief, the Qur'an speaks with gentleness. Indeed, we belong to Allah, and indeed to Him we will return. Surah Al-Baqarah 2, 156. It doesn't rush the sadness away, it acknowledges it. It teaches that grief is not weakness, it's part of life. And there is comfort in knowing that loss is not meaningless. When the soul is anxious and overwhelmed, the Qur'an reminds, verily in the remembrance of Allah do hearts find rest. Surah Ar-Ra'd 13:28. It speaks to the stress, the restlessness, the racing thoughts. It doesn't just tell the heart to calm down, it gives the solution, hikr, reflection, trust. When a person feels broken over their past, the Qur'an doesn't push them away, it pulls them closer. Say, O my servants who have transgressed against themselves, do not despair of the mercy of Allah. Surah Az-Zumar 39:53. Regret, guilt, shame all find a home in this verse. It tells the sinner that it's not too late, that Allah is still calling them by the word my servants. What kind of mercy is this? The Qur'an also speaks to joy. It teaches gratitude, but it also reminds not to become arrogant or forgetful during times of ease. Indeed, man transgresses when he sees himself self-sufficient. Surah Al-Alaq 96:6-7. This speaks directly to the emotion of pride when success makes a person feel untouchable, when wealth or strength blinds them. The Qur'an corrects the emotion, not just the behavior. It even speaks to loneliness. Indeed, Allah is with those who fear Him and those who do good. Surah An-Nahl 16:128. When friends leave, when the world turns cold, when no one understands, the Qur'an assures that Allah is near. And it doesn't stop there. The Qur'an recognizes fear, not just the fear of enemies or death, but the quiet fear of the future, the fear of failure, the fear of being alone. And whoever fears Allah, He will make for him a way out, and will provide for him from where he does not expect. Surah Talaq 65:2-3. Fear is met with promise, with divine reassurance, the kind of comfort no one else can give. Even anger is addressed. The Qur'an teaches self-restraint, not suppression. Those who restrain anger and who pardon the people, and Allah loves the doers of good. Surah Ali Imran 3:134. It doesn't say anger is wrong, it says control it, channel it. Don't let it ruin relationships or destroy inner peace. For those who feel confused or lost, not knowing what to do next, the Qur'an says, and whoever relies upon Allah, then He is sufficient for him. Surah At-Talaq 65:3. It speaks to the uncertainty, the hesitation, the mental blocks. It doesn't give all the answers at once, but it tells the heart to rely, to trust, and to move forward. Even when a person feels unimportant, like they don't matter in the grand scheme of the world, the Qur'an reminds, we have certainly created man in the best of stature. Surah At-Tin 95:4. Self-worth, self-image, all of it is affirmed by the words of the one who created the soul in the first place. The Qur'an also recognizes fatigue, spiritual exhaustion, the tiredness of trying to stay strong. Allah does not burden a soul beyond what it can bear. Surah Al-Baqarah 2:286. This one verse has carried millions through their lowest points. It doesn't deny the struggle, it validates it, then strengthens the soul. And when a person feels like giving up, the Qur'an says, so indeed with hardship comes ease. Surah Ash-Shah 94:6. Not just once, but twice in the same surah, as if to repeat it lovingly to the heart that needs to hear it again.